the muscular bronze breastplate, Greek hoplite, 600 BC, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think that is the era that we're looking at. Hi, Thak from Thak Ironworks. This is a big one. Pretty pumped today about making a breastplate. So let's get right into it. So I've got some bronze here, silicone bronze, which I got at great expense. This stuff is about 3 times the cost of brass, which is also very expensive, which might be about 4 or 5 times the cost of steel. So a fairly expensive material that I'm working with here, but I'm trying to get closer to the original bronze that guys in the Bronze Age were actually using for making armor. And I've worked with silicone bronze in the past before on a project making a Rocky statue, which never got done. And maybe I'll get Eric to put a couple of little clips here of that adventure of years gone by. But let's get right into the breastplate here. So a couple years ago for a television show called History in the Making, which I think is out still floating around on the internet. In fact, I see a YouTube video of me, about a 2-minute video of me making this particular breastplate. They've got a little clip of it that's got 25,000 views, which kind of pisses me off because that's why I'm making this one, so I can make my own bronze one that I can supersede that original little clip that's floating around out there in YouTube land. Anyway, made this one for that particular video. Typically when I'm making a muscular breastplate or something this involved sculpturally, I will do a clay maquette or mock-up. And if you're a viewer of my channel and you've watched other videos like making the Hound's helmet and stuff like that, you'll see where I start with a clay maquette. In this case, because I've got a couple of past breastplates with slightly different designs, I'm going to use these guys as my model, my go-to, as I'm making the one that I'm going to be starting on. So I'll put these aside. Typically, I also have to make a cardboard template when I'm doing a piece of body armor. In this case, I've done so many of these muscular breastplates, I actually have one that's listed as Greco-Roman. So I know I'm in the right ballpark then, and just in the right era. So this fits on, and I can see that it fits into my armpits here, that I've got some movement. I know that it's the right length, the right height, everything like that. What more can I say? It fits me, and that's the size that we are making. So now what I'm going to do is grab my piece. I've already cut out my piece of bronze here, and I have already gone to the forge and annealed it. So I have cut this out, annealed it, and it is ready to go. The first step that I have to do is lay down on the table here and get a center line and put some marks on, just to orient some of the landmarks that I'm going to be pounding out. So let's get down to the table. When I'm working with pieces of armor like this that have a symmetrical template, I usually fold it in half so that I can do my center lines very quickly. And I will just show you that process. Just gonna lay it on here, do a mark and a mark, and now I'm gonna flip it and just make sure that it does translate to the other side properly. Looks good, and then I can just use that as my straight edge. So I now have my center line. Get rid of that guy there. Now I'm going to go to my pre-existing breastplate there and just get some points of reference here. Come across there. I just want to get under the pecs, figure out where that line is going to be. Approximately, I'll forget my belly button in there as far as an orienting landmark. And then the solar plexus. So I just need to roughly get that in there. That just gives me something to start with. I'm going to be drawing and redrawing these lines 100 times before we're done this process. Now what follows is about an hour of pounding. So we'll move over to the lead shot bag on the stump here and begin. Okay, so I've got my lead shot bag here, which is in sad need of repair. It's got so many holes in it, I'm losing shot all the time. Anyway, I'll be working into that, and I'm using a dome-faced hammer. This is just a machinist hammer that I've carved, just ground a dome onto it. So I'm gonna start by just dishing out and getting some general shape. Start at the highest parts, which will be the man boobs. So I'm gonna drop those suckers in there and just start getting the whole thing to kind of turtle up, and well, just see how it goes. as I begin dishing, it really wants to curl in on itself, and you find you have to keep kind of flexing it back so that it doesn't curl up on itself too much. It's just controlling the shape, but you got to get sufficient depth, which just means this process is going to happen. You can see, looking at the other side, it's just starting to happen. We got some pecks that are actually happening here, but a long way to go. Only about 10 minutes into the process, but I'm already quite winded. This is, the early part of this process is just a lot of brute force. You're just basically using blunt force to push this into the lead shot, which takes a lot of your energy when you're doing that. So it's different than working it into a solid wooden form or a steel form or something like that, but it's kind of the first necessary step to get the initial shape in there. You can see I'm a big proponent of the 80-20 rule, and this is case in point, something very specific that a lot of the bulk of the shape just happens very quickly, and you can see it already emerging. You can kind of see, you can see the pecs there, and you can see like that solar plexus rib cage and the six pack in there and everything like that. But now, like 10-15 minutes into the process, we've got that. Now we've got another 8 hours to start refining that. So I just need to do a little bit more heavy pounding, and then things are going to become a little less physically demanding for me and become increasingly mentally demanding, as this one is really draining. I find is trying to keep that shape. There's a lot of changes in playing that are happening, and well, you'll see. Okay, so I've got the bulk of the rough shape in place now. I can feel it work hardening. Copper-based alloys work harden very quickly, quicker than something like steel, which does work harden as well. But the copper-based alloys, and bronze being no exception there, really I can feel it stiffen up under the hammer fairly quickly. I've done a lot of shaping already, and that has work hardened this. So what I'm gonna do is go over to the fire now and anneal the whole thing again, soften it all up, so it'll be easier to work, but it also will be stress-free. If I left it work hardened like this at this point and have to do so much change in shape, that's gonna add stress pockets, and the possibility of cracks and stuff forming are very real. So I want to relax it at this point and back in for more shaping. Okay, so I'm just gonna go in and get this on the fire. It's kind of a big awkward shape which hit my chimney here, so I've got to rotate this around quite a bit to be able to get to the center of it. And using the forge is something I'm used to using. You can use a propane torch for this, which is probably a lot safer because there's no danger of getting too hot and actually burning through your very expensive piece of bronze, but I like it risky. Trying to get heat in the center first, just bring it up to an orange coming through, and then I'm just going to rotate it slowly outwards towards the outer edges. So I've annealed the piece here, heated it up, and then quenched it, and now it's soft again. It's still wet here, so I can't draw on it with Sharpie, but I don't think I need to at this point. I can just do some rough shaping. So now, instead of working into the shot bag, I've got my big ball here, and I'm going to work over the ball and work from the outside. Should be noted that while I'm doing right now and I'm working on this, I'm hammering not onto the ball where I'm pinching the metal where I'd be thinning it out, making weak spots. What I'm doing is hitting beyond there. So I'm using the ball as kind of something to hold it in place, and then my goosenecked hammer here to just kind of push that metal forward into the direction that I want. So very important. You don't want, if you want to hear that pinching of metal between there, then you're thinning things out. You're asking for a lot of trouble later in the process. Okay, it's now finally dried off from the annealing there. So now I've got some rough shaping here. I'm gonna get my sample piece and I'm gonna start drawing out some more specific lines and try to sharpen up my landmarks a little bit from there. So a little bit of Sharpie work. Okay, so to recap, I did my first pass, I was working from the inside and I bulged it out. My second pass, I went over to the ball and I worked from the outside, pushing it back in. I've annealed it now. I'm gonna go back to the inside and start pushing out again. You can see that it's actually conforming somewhat to the body now. Still a long way to go, but we've got the basic parameters of what's going on here. So now, just wanna get it bulged out from there, get some of the high spots back out where they need to be, and then it's just gonna be back and forth until I get this exactly where I want it to be. Incidentally, I think I forgot to say early on that this is being made out of 18 gauge thick material. And what I ordered, I can't remember, I think it was 0.048, which is a skinny 18 gauge steel wise, but that is the specs. We'll put in the description below, we'll put all the specs of what it is, silicone bronze, what the alloy is, all that stuff, and have a nice little sheet of specs there for you history nerds that really want to see what I'm working with here. So let's get back to the work here. All right, I'm gonna redraw my landmarks on there to get some more specifics once again. Shape is coming along nicely. Right now, the thing has got a very squarish aspect to it. Not sure if you can capture it in this plane. Also, it is curling out this way. We need to bring back in by the abdominals in the side there, the obliques, we need to bring that in, give a bit of an hourglass shape, and that is a tricky process to do. But right now, I'm just gonna get more of the landmarks re-established with a Sharpie and start sharpening that up. All right, I'm at the point in the process now where I've got to really nail down the shape. By far the hardest part of this is this area right here, which I'm trying to get that indent there, which is the hardest thing to do. Metal doesn't want to move that way. Funnily enough, it's also the hardest thing to do on a person, is try to get your midsection down. But what I need to do is get this away from this very bulky, boxy shape and into a more hourglass figure. So I've got to be able to drop this down, this area down, while coming out at the same time. So this is a compound curve. where it's moving in two different directions at the very same time, and metal does not like to do that. So it's a bit of a tricky process, and I've got my two what I call valley stakes for that. This one's a saddle stake here, and this one is two balls here, but this allows me to get into those valleys. So here we go. Okay, as I stated, I'm at the tricky part now. I'm trying to bring in this area. I'm actually bringing in, if you look at it here, the breastplate still has kind of a whole curvature out that way, which is a less heroic posture that we're going for. If you look at my finished brass one here, how it scoops in, sucking the whole transverse abdominis in there and just giving it a much more heroic look, and that's part of the whole effect that we're trying to go for. So we want to bring in this whole area here, right above the belly button is where you want to kind of bring that in to get that shape. So struggling with that, I've dropped this back a little bit here. Now what I need to do is anneal it again. This is really work hardened here, so it's getting quite difficult to work. So I'm going to anneal it and try to bring it back a little bit more. Then once I capture that, then I can go and start refining the entire surface. So I have to make things get a little bit ugly here because I still have to do a lot of changes of shape there. So even though I've got my features now, I've got to destroy them to get it ultimately to the right shape. So now I've got the profile that I'm looking for. Of course, it's spread out this way, and I've bashed the shit out of all the definition that I had in there. But I'm much closer to the finished shape, and this is actually a good thing. I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at this point. So now, back to refining. Now what I need to do is kind of tuck in the sides, keeping this profile here while bringing this in here and just coaxing things down. Once I've got that, then I can go back to all my features and start smoothing things out again. All right, so it's worked hardened quite a bit, but I think I've more or less achieved the overall shape as far as where it fits on. It is fitting properly top and bottom there. I just need to refine this out. This will be dropping in a little bit more here, but it's more or less in place, and then the sides will tuck in a little bit. So I'm going to anneal it and back to the ball. All right, we're about 4.5 hours into this. I'm already starting to get fatigued mentally more than anything. This is always a real wrestling match to get to this point here. I think I've gotten to the point where I need to, as far as having all my highs and lows where they need to be. Now it just comes down to refining and symmetry. Symmetry is a bitch. And something like this, you want to have pretty symmetrical. You want things to, it's just going to make for the overall aesthetic of the thing to be quite good. Speaking of which, we finally got our internet working again, and I was able to print off the original piece from the museum. I'm not even sure where it's from. We'll figure that out. It'll be in the description below. Anyway, this is my original inspiration for this particular breastplate, and I really like the aesthetic of this particular one. And I think it has really nice lines and just something that looks very wearable at the same time, just a very beautiful piece. So that's what I'm aiming for, and here we go. I'm at the point where I still got quite a bit of refining to do on the overall shape, but I'm pretty much there, and I'm at the point where I can actually roll the edges. So I'm going to be for the armpits, the neck, and along the bottom there, I'm going to roll the edge. Typically I roll it to the inside and push it out. I think on this one, looking at the picture there, it looks like it was rolled forward. It doesn't look like a full roll, but I'm just going to roll it from the inside out, and it's not always as clean that way, but I think I can afford to do that with something like this. I don't mind a little bit of rusticness on this one. So what I'm going to do is grab a Sharpie and just position my finger here, and I'm coming in about 1/4 of an inch, and then I just trace a line there. Then I will go over to my stake here, just a regular chisel stake, and placing it onto the stake, and I'm coming in with a ball of a ball peen hammer here, and I'm just going to start bringing that over. Okay, so I've rolled 3 of the edges. I rolled the bottom, the sides. This I'm leaving because I want to do a repoussé decorative element here, which is yet to be determined, and that will be another day. So I don't want to have that in the way of whatever I end up doing there. So I'm about 7 hours in, getting fairly fatigued and a little bit frustrated at wrestling with the shape, getting the subtle nuances of it and stuff. And then Eric, I guess to cheer me up, brought me a couple of reference shots here of some so-called muscular breastplates. So there's this one, and then there is this one. Look at this thing. Did this person even understand human anatomy? Like, I don't even understand what I'm looking at here. This is an abomination. This should not be. So anyway, it did cheer me up. It makes me feel better about what I've got here. I think I'm at least a little bit better than this one here. Like, God's sakes, look at the nipples. Look at the placement of the nipples. I'm speechless, but anyway, talking about nipples, that's about where I am on my breastplate. I am ready now to get in the belly button and the nipples, get those guys in there. Those are our final little features or landmarks. Once I've got that in place, then I can spend another hour or 2 just going over and refining everything. But these processes tend to be a little bit invasive as far as banging things up and distorting things. So I'll get them out of the way, and then I'll be able to get into the final subtle shaping.